My name's Rahul. I'm going into my fourth year, so I just finished preclinical, and I'm going to give a quick talk on personal statements and what Shannon and I believe is a good way to write them. So Shannon's just finished his fifth year elective, and he's going into his final year. So the two of us are going to discuss this. Okay, so just a quick disclaimer. We're not, the be all and end all. This is the way that we believe you should write your personal statement, but there's no clear-cut way of, there's no right or wrong way to do it. These are just the general trends that the most successful students have had in the past. And secondly, some of these are our own personal statements. Please don't copy and paste them into your own. UCAS won't like that for starters, and it's just generally not a good practice. So firstly, what is a personal statement? So it's about 4,000 characters or 47 lines of text. That's your maximum limit. And this comes up to around 600 words, give or take 50 words. And it's your opportunity to discuss why you want to study medicine. Medicine is quite a demanding subject, and the best applicants tend to demonstrate their enthusiasm and commitment to medicine. And they typically tend to do this through their medicine section or their personal statement, which we'll discuss later. And it's typically seen as, you're discussing this in your own time. You're, pursuing this in your own time. But most importantly, from my perspective, is to show that you're suitable for the course. What I do want to stress, though, is that it's not the most important thing part of your application. From my perspective, I looked at it as kind of almost a tick box thing, as in you want to write a good personal statement, but it's not going to make or break your application. So don't stress. I spoke to an admissions tutor, and these were the 4 key things that I was told that admissions tutors look for. So what they're mainly after is someone who shows a clear interest and motivation for medicine, and that they clearly outline and appreciate the demanding nature of the subject. They typically do this through demonstrating specific requirements, which Shannon and I will discuss later on. And then they also want you to be compassionate and committed. So you can show these through some of your supercurriculars, say volunteering at a care home or other such stuff. And finally, they want you to be well-rounded. So the majority of successful applicants tend to have either sports they do on the side, they're involved in societies, community activities, even like religious activities as well. It's important that you demonstrate what these have shown you and not just list them. And then this is our brief template that we've come up with. So you start with your introductory statement, then your main portion is the medicine-related content and your academic interests, followed by a brief section on your extracurriculars before you close off your statement. Without further ado, I'll introduce Shannon, who will discuss the first 2 topics.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, I'm Shannon. I'm a 6th year now. Can everyone see the slides all right? So as Rahul's outlined, our structure sort of suggestions, not too groundbreaking. So now we'll dive into the depth of these paragraphs and see if we can give you some ideas if you haven't already started to construct your personal statement. There'll be little interactive bits as well. So the interest statement is something that a lot of people stress out about. And a lot of people suggest that you maybe write it at the end, just write the bulk of your personal statement and then do it at the end, because otherwise you've got a blank word processor and you haven't written anything and you're stressing out about the first few words. So don't bother doing that, just don't think about it, because actually no medical school is going to make or break the application. They're not going to give you an interview or not based upon the first sentences, because they know that it's a bit tricky to write, and also you don't really say much in them anyway. So ideally what people say is why they want to do medicine. And if you've got your own reason, which is a bit interesting or very personal, that's fantastic. But if you don't, realistically, the majority of people do medicine for the same reasons, which is they're quite interested in science and they want to use it to help other people. So if you're really stuck, just try and write your own honest version of that type of thing, and then just get on with the rest of the personal statement. Just make it short and sweet. So we've got some examples here for you, which are kind of exactly that. So look at this first sentence here. Medicine provides the opportunity to combine my enthusiasm for science with my desire to make a difference to people's lives. And then they've elaborated it on a little bit. But to be honest, that summarizes what we're trying to say. You know, they're not lying, they're not being pretentious. They're just saying, I like science, I want to change people's lives, which is fair enough, because that's probably what most doctors would say as well. And then here, a nice short one. My enthusiasm for medicine was sparked by my interest in the human aspect of science and applying my knowledge to find solutions to real life problems. Really straightforward, perfect, just gets it out of the way. And then this is mine, which is a bit more strange, which I got mocked for quite a lot by my teachers. But as a child, I would spend hours drawing plans for emergency vehicles and their equipment. Whilst I've grown to appreciate medicine's not about blue flashing lights, this childhood obsession has developed into a serious interest in critical care. So I've got some of these drawings for you as a bit of light relief. So these were drawings that I made of the emergency services. And I've still not grown up at all, because I did my elective on an air ambulance, and you can see the resemblance there between the photo and the original picture. Okay, so that's the intro. Get it out of the way, and then you want to get into the bulk of it. And you can see in this icon in the top right corner, the medicine content really should be the bulk of the personal statement. So this is your work experience, your volunteering, and any academic type stuff that maybe your friends who are doing other subjects might put in their personal statement. So books they've read, podcasts, talks, articles, all of that sort of thing. So what I'm going to do, we're running a little bit behind schedule, so I'll just wait now for 30 seconds. And if you can sort of write down all of your these three things that you will write in your personal statement, and then we can take it from there. So I will sit in awkward silence now for about 30 seconds. So jot down on a piece of paper all of the bits and bobs you've been doing to put in this section. Okay, so that was well, a very long 30 seconds for me, but I know this is probably a little bit, maybe you've already got past this stage. If you're already writing your personal statement, maybe not that helpful, but you'll see why we're doing it in a minute, because we're going to now start to build up towards writing a full personal statement from it. So that's your content, and now you've got to work out how to write about it and what order to put it in your personal statement. So now what you need to do is think about what you've learned from each of these experiences and how you've taken it further, because actually it doesn't matter. Very few people will be able to get fancy work experience in a hospital, and anyway, unless they write something interesting about what they've learned, it doesn't count for anything. You know, medical admissions tutors know that not everyone can get fancy placements in fancy hospitals in London, and therefore if you just say that, you don't get any points. So you need to be able to reflect on that experience and pick out something particular that you saw the doctors doing, that you saw the team doing, or maybe a particular condition, and then take it a bit further to demonstrate your enthusiasm. So this is what we call the sort of topic technique. So instead of just listing all the things you've done, try to use each thing you've done as a stepping stone to then say something else related to it. And it really it shows that you're more of an adult learner, that you're really carrying through with your enthusiasm for these things. You're not just seeing something and then letting it slide, and then seeing something else and then letting it slide. If you track it and you develop it a bit more, it also actually reads more interesting for the person reading it. They have to read hundreds of personal statements. They don't just want a list of your experiences. So let's have a look at how this looks. So my time spent in neuro anesthesia ICU allowed me to witness patients in distressing situations, highlighting complex moral issues involved in medicine, especially as one of the patients I saw had attempted to commit suicide. So that's a specific example, and then saying how they've learned from it gave me insight into the difficult decisions made by doctors and the emotional burdens. So that's demonstrating some reflection there, rather than just, I went to a fancy intensive care unit. Attending a presentation by Nuffield Council on Bioethics, highlighted that vulnerable people can fall through the gaps between health and social care. So something that you've learned from it. And then they go on to talk about how they picked up on this and developed it for their AS biology coursework. So they're not just saying, I did my biology coursework, I attended the talk. They're trying to link them together, and it reads much more nicely. So what you end up with, instead of people listing all their work experience, listing all their volunteering, and then trying to cram some books and articles they've read in at the end, you end with the topic technique structure where the paragraphs make more sense. If anyone's doing an essay subject for their A-levels, they'll know that for an essay, you really, you have to group things by theme, and therefore it will read a lot nicer if you can try and do it by topic. Now, the next thing that you might be thinking is, how on earth, if I haven't even done medicine yet, how do I come up with 3 topics that I'm interested in? And you might be the sort of person that has 3 in mind, but most people don't. I know that I didn't. And so really, you just sort of have to see what you found interesting in your volunteering, in your work experience. And then you can read an article, read an online BBC article, even that counts, to sort of pad those things out. So if you see, so most people don't have pre-prepared topics, and pretty much no one gets to say, well, I'm interested in brains, I'm going to do a neurosurgery placement at a fancy hospital. The hospital that I was in my city didn't allow any work experience or volunteering students at all. So, there's no way that you're going to be able to pick and choose exactly, but you might pick something that you've seen on your placement or your volunteering, and then you can develop it further with your reading. And like I said, it doesn't take long to read a news article or watch a half-an-hour TED talk about it, and then say what you thought about it, because that's the reflection. So here's more examples of this, and really developing it even more. So during my week at the Royal Free Neurology Department, the clinics I attended made me appreciate the bank of knowledge and skills doctors must have to treat hemifacial spasm with Botox. It also showed me the challenges of diagnosing patients, since patients can have symptoms which manifest in different ways. This stimulated my interest in neurology and led me to read The Private Life of the Brain, which explores where the mind is connected to chemical activity in the brain. So they've seen something, they've commented on it, they've then developed it by reading a book, and then they've commented on that. And then again, even more stepping stones with this one. My passion for politics and improving lives on a larger scale has contributed to an appreciation of epidemiology and public health. Through work experience at general practices at Hackney and Brighton, I saw how primary care must be tailored to the community's health inequalities. To learn about this on a broader scale, I researched Médecins Sans Frontières and visited their London office. Since attending an MSF conference on tropical disease, I read a couple of books exposing the ethical complexity and futility of aid medicine. So they've said a few different things, they've commented on it, they've said they're learning, and they've packed in both work experience, volunteering, and their sort of academic all into one paragraph that hangs together a lot nicer. So now, if you can, try and pick out experiences or examples during your volunteering and your work experience, and then think about where you can then go away and Google those things and maybe read articles about it. And this will now start to hang together in a more topic style. Now, finally, this topic-based system, it's nice if it works, but it doesn't matter, because most people won't do this. Most people will just do the classic work experience, volunteering, academic paragraph. So don't worry if you can't fit it into this. This is just like icing on the cake, making it nice for the people reading it. So if it works, it works. If it doesn't, don't worry at all. Okay, so good luck, and I hope that makes sense. I'm going to hand back to Rahul now to talk about the rest of the personal statement.
Thank you, Shannon, for that. I'm now going to talk about the extracurriculars. So if you can see my screen, you can see that I've put an 80 to 20 here in bold and in red. This is just so that it's quite important to stress that you shouldn't spend more than 20% of your personal statement on the extracurriculars. You know, it's really, you know, the last section that you should do before closing. I mean, you can structure it differently, sure, but it shouldn't form a bigger bulk of your personal statement, because remember, you only have 600 words to do this all. As Shannon discussed earlier, it's what you reflect and what you tell, or what you just, you know, talk about what you've gained from this. So don't just list that, you know, I played football for 8 years. Doesn't really mean much. Talk about how you played football for 8 years, and so it's allowed you to develop better team working skills as you've had to deal through difficult times, or, you know, times under pressure. So you can tell from reading a few personal statements that there's a certain list of skills that people tend to have. And one document that we recommend you reading is this NHS guidance called Tomorrow's Doctors. It's published by the GMC. It may have a different name now, something like what's expected from graduates, outreach from graduates. But, you know, it's really not that too different. Like, it's just the same document renamed. And the typical skills that they're looking for are leadership skills, communication skills, time management skills, organization skills, and that you're empathetic. So if you look at a few sample personal statement extracurricular sections, you can see what I mean. So for the first one, they've discussed that they've done gymnastics, but they've then gone on to show that it, you know, they've described that it required self-reflection, discipline, and that through their coaching, they've allowed them to get, it's been a teaching opportunity for them. The next one discusses debating and running feminist society. And they've discussed how this has helped them under high pressure scenarios, and then also boosted their communication skills. Another one, a different one, rather than going for sports, and this is more society related as well, I've shown that when you're ahead of a society, you know, you develop your leadership skills, and then also you develop different communication skills and how you can deal with talking to people in front of large audiences. And it's this sort of thing that they're looking for. They're not after, have you done X, Y, Z? It's what you've gained from these experiences. And, you know, this example has also gone on to talk about their musical talents. And then finally, I think this might be Shannon's, in fact, they've talked about air cadets, which is another, you know, important thing that people tend to do. It's not necessary at all, but it does make you seem definitely a bit more interesting than the run-of-the-mill sports. And, you know, they've talked about their sporting progress and what they've learned from this, or what skills were required for this. And then finally, the closing statement is, it's not the most important thing. They're looking for the bulk, like the content that Shannon discussed, like the medicine-related content. But it's important in that you want to end on a positive note. You want to quickly summarize why you think you'd be a good doctor, but also do it in a positive way. It's the last thing they're going to read before they don't look at your application again. So it's nice to be memorable, or keep your closing statement sharp, punchy, and end it on a positive note. So if we look at a few examples now, this one, while I have been drawn to medicine for a long time, my experiences over the past few years made me realize why I find it so captivating. The ability to understand the detailed science behind the human body and then apply it, not only to cure people using conventional techniques, but to change and improve the way medicine is practiced, is a formidable challenge, and one that I'm eager to undertake. So another few key themes that you'll see in our example is that they've discussed that medicine is a challenge, that they appreciate this, that they're enthusiastic and committed, and they make it seem as though, and I'm sure they are, excited about studying medicine. I'd say those are the key things that I would do if I was to write a personal statement again. The next one similarly discusses how a career in medicine is demanding, but then talks about the positive aspects of it. And then also discusses the constant learning and their qualities that they have towards the end of the statement that make them believe that they'd be a good doctor. And then finally, the bottom statement discusses the different fields of medicine, but the shared characteristics of all doctors and how they believe they will fit in and share these characteristics as well. So finally, I think it's important to not discuss A-levels as you have a reference, you have a teacher's reference that your school will write, and they will typically discuss things like what A-levels you do, how you are in class, that sort of thing. So I don't think it's worth discussing for, what A-levels you do for definite. It's worth asking your teachers as well for a rough guidance of what they're going to write in it. I don't think you're allowed to see it, but just so that you know that you're not going to repeat any information, because as before, you've got limited space. So we have a few final tips I've discussed that you should include information about your subjects. I mean, you can. Some people have and have been successful, but it doesn't work for the vast majority. One thing I will very much stress, though, is that you need to be honest. Because if and when you get to the interview stage, they will pick apart your personal statement and they will discuss anything at length. So if you mention, for example, that you've read a book, don't just flick through it. You need to read it cover to cover and be able to, draw a few insights from it, for example. But I know I've been pretty negative and pessimistic. It is worth knowing that it's only one minor part of your application. Cambridge typically interviews the vast majority of applicants. So the way I'd see it is that it's a stepping stone towards getting the interview, and the interview is the more important part of the application process. So thank you for your time, and good luck for your future endeavours. We hope to see you at Cambridge in the future. I think Shannon and I have 1 or 2 minutes remaining, so we can quickly answer 1 or 2 of the questions that have been put up in the Q&As. Shannon, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I've got them in front of me. So the first question was, is it okay to start with work experience, then some academic, then back to work experience? So that makes sense. In the sort of topic idea, you would be doing that. You would be mixing in all your work experience and your volunteering, your academic. So yes, definitely okay to go back and forth. With the 80-20 structure, wouldn't it disadvantage us applying for the non-Cambridge schools, which expect a 60-40 structure? No. So what this means is, it really depends how you sort of split up your volunteering versus your extracurricular. So if you define your extracurriculars just as your sports and your music and your whatever other things that you like to do in your own spare time, then that should still only be 20%. Your volunteering, which might be, offering to help coach your sport or whatever else you've done, that comes in the bulk of it. So the point is, with your volunteering type stuff, that's included in the 80%. It's just the 20% is just basically things that you do for yourself, that you like to do, your hobbies. Your 20% is your hobbies, and then you try and look at your hobbies and you say, what have I learned or what have I developed skills-wise from this that I can put in my personal statement? Any volunteering, even if it is related to your sort of hobbies or whatever, that doesn't count as extracurricular. It counts as being the medicine content. So it doesn't disadvantage you for other medical schools. Other medical schools expect you to focus on, they understand that people can't get work experience. They understand that not everyone should be, and really not everyone should be having grade 8 in loads of fancy musical instruments. They want you to mainly show that you've done lots of volunteering and that you've learned stuff from that. And that's the same for every medical school. If you only apply to 4 medical courses, how do you make sure your personal statement covers? So that sort of is covered by the last question, in that for every medical school, it should be focusing on what you've done in your volunteering and the skills you've developed and the things that you've seen there. And then you can, add in a book or two every so often, and that'll satisfy Cambridge's needs. So actually, that it will apply for all of them. Nice sentence starters. So I would say nice sentence starters are using I did this, I saw that, and then, so do not start your sentences with any fancy words because they're a waste of characters and it sounds pretentious. Whole immigration so yeah, so that's true. If you've got, for whatever personal reason, you've got a lot of experience to draw from that doesn't fit into a neat sort of organized extracurricular activity, you can draw on that throughout the whole personal statement, and that would go well in the medicine content as well, because that is very relevant. You can reflect on those experiences and incorporate that into the medicine paragraph. It's okay to, you can weave your leadership roles. Exactly, you can do it however best flows for you. It doesn't have to, you don't have to stick to any rigid structure. You can put some of your leadership or your extracurriculars into where you've mentioned other stuff, if you've mentioned leadership in your work experience section. How many different volunteering experiences should we have? There's no number that you can have. The problem is the last 18 months have been tough for everybody, except people with fancy doctor parents, maybe. So you can definitely get 4 offers with 1 volunteering. It's what you learn from it, how you talk about it, and ultimately what you've actually done. It's not about doing a couple of hours volunteering at 10 different places. They don't want to see that. I heard at other conferences that we shouldn't name drop hospital names or names of doctors. Definitely don't say names of doctors. You can, so name dropping hospitals is a problem because it's very long. So and they're not going to be impressed if you went to a very fancy hospital and you've wasted lots of characters doing it. So that's why they say don't name drop hospitals. But if it makes it easier for you to write, like, at Northern General Hospital or whatever, then just write that, because that's the same number of characters as my local general hospital or whatever. But don't write out Great Ormond Street Hospital for Sick Children. As the postgrad, do you know if it's appropriate? This is the last question, by the way. I don't think so. The question is, should you include a LinkedIn link in your personal statement to cover things that you can't fit into your personal statement? So you could put your LinkedIn. So for Cambridge, there's this funny thing where you can do a supplementary personal statement. You could put your LinkedIn link there if you want to, but for your main personal statement, the majority of medical schools will only read those 4,000 characters. They will not then follow your link through to your LinkedIn. So I would say do not put that in your main personal statement. So that's a very particular question. So probably not to go in the main personal statement. So that's all of the personal statement questions. Sorry, we ran over a little bit. I hope that's been helpful for everybody. And continue, if you've got more questions, send an email or continue to message in the Q&A chat.